Okay, so now I welcome today's guest speaker, Dr. Prashant Pandey, sir, Assistant Professor in YCC Engineering College, Nagpur. Sir is going to take the topic of Geotechnical Engineering, Section 3. Welcome, sir, and good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
So now I hand over this session to you, sir. You may start now.
To Asif sir. Okay, sir. So today was a fourth session of Geotechnical Engineering, Section 3, and it might be a last session of this Section 3. These are the contents which today I'm going to cover from Foundation Engineering, and main topic is subsurface investigation, which you have studied in Geotechnical Engineering 2 in UG. Is this topic covers covered with some subtopics, scope of geotechnical engineering or scope of subsurface investigation, and the drilling borehole sampling, plate load test, and standard penetration test. Mainly, in which you can interpret of which this picture is of drilling, and this is of sampling. So you already have an idea why drilling and boring is required, because it is the preliminary investigation of soil, or drilling can be done for providing pile foundations also. Here the purpose of drilling is to get the samples for testing and to get the preliminary investigation of the soil or detailed investigation of the soil. So importance and objective of field exploration, the main importance is this is required for obtaining the information about subsurface condition at a proposed site, and it is also used to obtain the useful information uh, for further construction or providing which type of foundation. To determine depth of foundation, to determine bearing capacity, to get the established groundwater table, and for calculating differential settlement, then for lateral pressure and construction techniques. Also to predict and solve the potential foundation problems, and to ascertain the suitability of particular construction material. Also to investigate the safety of existing structure and to suggest the remedial measures for existing structures. And stages in subsurface exploration that we should know. See, the reconnaissance survey means basic information or from maps or available data. Then preliminary exploration means this is in this we can determine the tentative depth of foundation or tentative water table location. And detailed exploration means to determine the engineering properties of that particular soil and to determine bearing capacity and the strength of that soil. In first stage of subsurface exploration, that is reconnaissance, in this we can study the map of that particular area, or we can refer the other relevant records. This helps in deciding future program of site investigation. Either we should go to preliminary investigation or we should go to detailed investigation. And this is also help in deciding scope of work and method of exploration adopted, then type of samples to be taken, and laboratory testing and in situ testing. And preliminary exploration, in this we use to determine the thickness, depth or extent and composition of that each soil stratum, then the depth of bedrock and groundwater table, Then preliminary exploration are generally in the form of a few boring or test pits. So in this, we also used to conduct cone penetrometer or sounding rods just to obtain the information regarding strength and compressibility of soil. Then geophysical methods is also covered under preliminary exploration for locating the boundaries of different strata. In this exploration stage, we used to determine, we generally determine the engineering properties of soil in different strata, and this includes boring program, sampling, and testing of samples in laboratory. Also, this includes field tests such as vein shear test, plate load test, permeability test, which are conducted to determine the properties of soil in natural state or undisturbed state. These tests for determination of dynamic properties are also carried out if required. Then for complex projects also, in which some heavy structures, bridges, dams, multi-storied buildings, it is essential to have detailed exploration. However, the small projects, especially at the sites where the strata may not be during reconnaissance and preliminary investigation. In planning of subsurface exploration, while planning, we should have an idea that this planning depends on the structure to be built and variability of strata. Then extent of investigation. Extent means the cost of investigation and cost of project. More details in investigation is required, then more is known about the subsurface exploration. Greater economy can be achieved in the construction of project. However, it will be economical when the cost of investigation is beyond limit. The extent of investigation depend on the location of project, that is built up area, then new area or multi-storied building. Heavily loaded buildings, variable deposits, uniform deposits, or cost of investigation. Then cost of investigation varies between 0.05 to 0.2%. In unusual condition, up to 1%. It should not be greater than 1%. Then soil exploration methods. In soil exploration methods, first method is trial pits or test pits. Second is boring. Then next is probe. In situ test, that we can say that is geophysical methods. Here we should have to focus on the types of boring, because in our syllabus mainly boring is the main part of our content. So various types of boring are auger boring, wash boring, percussion drilling, rotary drilling, core boring. In boring, it is similar to the one used by carpenter for boring holes in wood. It consists of shank with the crosswise handle for turning and having central tapered feed screw, and this is operated either manually or mechanically. Then the hand augers used in the boring is of diameter 15 to 20 centimeter. These are suitable for advancing holes up to 3 to 6 meters in soft soil. Hand auger is attached to lower end of pipe of about 18 mm dia. The pipe is provided with cross arm at its top. The hole is advanced by turning the cross arms manually, and the same will be applying the thrust in downward direction when auger is filled with soil is taken out. Here hand auger. This is the image of hand auger in which we have to move in clockwise direction or provide a torque in clockwise direction, and it will be penetrated into the soil. It is of diameter 15 to 20 centimeter, and it will achieve maximum depth, that is 3 to 6 meter depth in soft soil. Mechanical augers, in which three major types are there: continuous flight auger, hollow stem auger plugged with during advancing bores, truck mounted auger boring machines. This is the boring carried out at site. Driven by power, downward pressure can be applied hydraulically or mechanically or by dead weight, used to make holes in hard stratum up to great depth. For depth greater than 12 meter, even the boring is inconvenient, and other types it can be used. Advantages, suitability and uses of this type of boring. Auger boring is generally used in clays, silt, partially saturated sand, which can stand up unsupported, usually for subsurface exploration of highways, railways, and airfield, where depth of exploration is very small. The investigation are quite rapid and economical by this method. And disadvantages are not used in large cobble, boulders, and other type of obstructions which prevent drilling of hole. The soil sample obtained are highly disturbed. It is difficult to locate the soil strata. The principle of wash boring is to provide the drill rod, which is hollow, and water will be pressure into this hollow drill rod that will be jetting out from this casing. This is the space between casing and drill rod. This will be coming out into the tub, and this is the chopper and chopping bit and driving shoe. And here there is bottom, at the bottom of this driving chopping bit, there is a water jet for escaping water from the hollow rod. So the chopping and jetting action is important. So here main thing is by chopping and jetting that material or soil, extracted soil, that will be extruded from this outlet and collected in the tub. So here it is a detail of that wash boring, in which first driving and casing about 2 to 3 meter long, and then inserting into a hollow drill rod, which chisel with chisel shaped chopping bit at its lower end. Water is pumped down the hollow drill rod, which is known as a wash pipe. Water emerges a strong jet through a small opening of chopping bit. The whole is advanced by combination of chopping action and the jetting action at drilling bit, and accompanying water jet disintegrate the soil. The water and chop soil particles rise upward through the annular space between cases. Return water, also known as the wash water, is laden with the soil cutting. It is collected in a tub through a T-shaped pipe fixed at the top of casing. The hole is advanced by alternatively raising and dropping the chopping bit by winch. The swell joint provided at the top of drill rod facilitate the turning and twisting of rod. Then what are the advantages of wash boring? It is mainly used for advancing a hole in ground. The equipment is used to wash. Boring is relatively light and inexpensive. Disadvantages are it is slow in steep soil and coarse grained soil. It cannot be used efficiently in hard soil, rocks, and soil containing boulders. The method is not suitable for taking good quality undisturbed soil sample. Percussion drilling. The percussion drilling method is used for making holes in rock boulders and other hard strata. In this method, a heavy chisel is alternatively lifted up and dropped in vertical hole. The material gets pulverized if the point where the chisel strikes above water table. Water is added to the hole. The water formed slurry with the pulverized material, which is removed by sand pump or bale or the baler at intervals. The percussion drilling may require a casing. In this, it is also drilling used for drilling tube wells. This method is also used for. See, this is the chopper used in percussion drilling, or you can say drill bit, and it is diagrammatic representation. Here, jetting with the help of jetting action, again water or soil will be taken out in the tub. Advantages. It can be used for all type of soil, particularly used for drilling holes in glacial till containing boulders. Disadvantages are the material at bottom of hole is disturbed by heavy blows of chisel, which is not possible to get good quality and disturbed sample. Then the method is more expensive. This is rotary drilling. In case of rotary drilling, the borehole is advanced by rotating a hollow drill rod which has a cutting bit at its lower end. The drilling is provided at the top of drill rod. It consists of a rotary machine and arrangement for applying downward pressure. Rotary drilling can be used in clay, sand, and rock. Boreholes of diameter 50 mm to 200 mm can be easily made by this method. The method is not well adapted for use in materials containing a large percentage of particles of gravel size and bigger. The particles of this size start rotating beneath the drill rod and becomes difficult to advance the hole. It consists of a direct power unit which winch pump and drill head to apply high speed rotary drive and downward thrust up to the drilling. Primarily it intended for investigation in rock but also used in soil. The drilling tool, cutting bit or coring bit is attached to the lower end of the drilling rod. Water or drilling fluid is pumped down the hollow rods. The drilling fluid cools and lubricates the drilling tool and carries loose debris to the surface between the rods and side of holes. So here mainly the main thing is cutting or coring bit. In the here it is the core and core barrel. sludge barrels, and which is attached to the drill rod, and here it is the drive pipe and this winch attached to winch mounted on the in, this engine. This is derrick tripod. Then core drilling. In core drilling, which is used in rock and hard clays, the diameter of a tungsten carbide bit cut an annular in the material, and an intact core enters the barrel to be removed as a sample. Typical core diameter are 41, 54, and 76 mm, but can can be in the range of to 165 mm. See, this is in this image. You can see the core. This is a drill bit. This is core collected, core of rock, and after splitting it into two parts, you will get cores of rock. During drilling, we can get the core. That's why this is called as core drilling. This is a summary of the method of boring. You can see here all type of boring listed here, and that advanced hole up to means maximum depth of boring is 3 meter and 12 meter in this case, and suitable in which type of soil and operation. Samples obtained either disturbed or undisturbed that are summarized in this table. So here you can see the mainly you have to remember the operation and sample obtained. Depth of exploration. Up to which depth we should go while exploring the soil. So depth of exploration required at a particular site depends upon the degree of variation in the horizontal and vertical direction. It is not possible to fix the number of and position of disposition and without making a few preliminary borings or soundings at the site. The geotechnical long experience and good engineering judgment may give some guidelines. Depth of exploration is governed by the depth of influence zone. The depth of influence zone depends upon the type of structure, intensity of loading, shape and disposition of loaded area, in soil physical characteristics of soil, the depth to which a stress increment due to superimposed load can be produced, significant settlement and shear stress is known as the significant depth. The depth of exploration should be at least equal to significant depth. How much should be the significant depth with respect to the structures or foundation type of foundation? According to it is generally it is taken as a depth at which the vertical stresses will be developed, means up to 20% of loading intensity, which more influence will be there. Beyond that, influence of vertical load is negligible. According to above criteria, the depth of exploration should be 1.5 times the width of square footing and above 3 times the width of strip footing. However, if the footing are closely spaced, the whole of loaded area acts as a rock foundation. In that case, the depth of boring should be at least 1.5 times the width of entire loading area. See in this figure here, it is the width of foundation, and depth of exploration should be up to the 1.5 times B. In this case, you have to calculate the total width of this complete footings, and 1.5 width of footing will be the depth of exploration in loosely spaced footing. In case of pile foundation, the depth of exploration below the tip of bearing piles is kept 1.5 times the width of pile group. Then that 1.5 times B will be measured from the distance d by 3. However, in case of friction pile, the depth of exploration is taken as 1.5 times the width of pile group measured from the lower third part of the figure, as shown in figure. Of a multi-storied building, the depth of exploration can be taken as d equals to c s raised to the power 0.7. This is according to Source and Source 1970, where d is equals to depth of exploration, c is constant equal to 3 for light steel buildings and narrow concrete buildings, is equal to 6 for heavy steel buildings and wide concrete buildings. S is equals to number of stories. If loose soil or recently deposited soil or weak stratum is encountered, it should be explored thoroughly. The explorations should be carried to depth at which net increase in vertical stress is less than the allowable pressure of soil. For exploration of deep excavations, the depth of exploration below the proposed excavation level should be at least 1.5 times the depth of excavation. In case of road cuts, it is taken at least equal to width of cut. In case of road fills, the minimum depth of boring is 2 meter below the ground surface or equal to the height of fill, whichever is greater. In case of gravity dam, the minimum depth of boring is twice the height of dam. Then for two adjacent footings, the each of size B by L spaced at A, IS IS 1892 suggests that minimum depth of footing should be 1.5 B when A is greater than or equal to 4 times B, and if A is less than 2 times B, then 1.5 L will be the 1.5 L will be the minimum depth of footing exploration. For adjacent rows of footing, the minimum recommended depth of exploration is 4.5 B when A is less than 2B, 3.5 B when A is less than 2B, A is greater than 2B, and 1.5 B when A is greater than or equal to 4B. Extent of exploration, up to which extent we can explore, we should have to explore. The lateral extent of exploration or the spacing of boreholes depends mainly upon the variation of strata in the horizontal direction. The exploration should be extensive so as to reveal the major changes in the properties of subsurface strata. For small important buildings, even one borehole or trial pit in the center might sufficient. But for compact building covering an area of about 0.4 hectares, there should be at least 5 boreholes, 1 at center and 4 near the corners, as shown in this figure. See, 1 at center and 4 on the corners. For large multi-story buildings, the boreholes should be drilled at all the corners and also at important location. The spacing of boreholes generally kept at between 10 to 30 meter, depending on the variation in the subsurface conditions and loading. For highway, subsurface explorations are usually carried out along the proposed center line or along the ditch line. The spacing of boreholes usually varies between 150 to 300. If substrata is erratic, the spacing may be reduced to even 30 meter. In case of concrete dam, the spacing of boreholes generally varies between 40 to 80 meters. Then come to next topic, soil sampling, need of sampling, why it is required or why necessity of sampling. Without sampling, you cannot perform the laboratory test. and we cannot get the index properties, index property test like specific gravity and water content. The classification test, for example, Atterberg limits are in place. In laboratory, third part of laboratory testing is using parameters like shear strength, compressibility, and permeability. Factors to be considered while sampling are they should be large enough to feature and fracturing. They should be taken in such a way that should not lose the fraction of the in situ soil samples, for example, coarse fine grained particles. Type of samples are non-representative and representative, then in disturbed and undisturbed. Non-representative means those in which neither in situ soil structure, moisture content, nor the soil particles are preserved. They are not representative. They cannot be used for any test as the soil particle either gets mixed up or some particles may lost. Example samples that are obtained through the wash boring or percussion boring are non-representative samples. Then disturbed soil samples are those in which in situ soil structures and moisture contents are lost, but the soil particles are intact. They are representative. They can use for grain size analysis, liquid and plastic limit, specific gravity of soil, compaction test, moisture content, organic condensation, and soil classification test performed in the lab. Example obtained the samples obtained through cutting while augering, grab, split spoon sampler, SPT, etc. Soil samples. Undisturbed soil samples are those in which the in situ soil structure and moisture contents are preserved. They are representative soil samples. These are used for consolidation, used for testing consolidation, permeability or shear strength test, that is engineering properties. More complex jobs or where clay exists in sand, it is very difficult to obtain undisturbed soil samples obtained by using Shelby tube, thin wall, piston sampler, surface or box vacuum, freezing, etc. Design features which affect the sample disturbance: area ratio, inside clearance, outside clearance, then recovery ratio, inside wall friction, design of non-return wall, and method of applying force and size of sampling tube. The important part of design factors, first factor is area ratio, which is equals to max. It is the ratio of maximum cross-section area of the cutting edge to area of soil sample, and its formula is AR. It is indicated by AR is equals to D2 square minus D1 square upon D1 square into 100. See in this figure, D1, D2, D3 is cleared. D1 is inside diameter of this cutting edge, outside diameter of cutting edge is D2, and inside diameter of sampling tube is D3, outside diameter of the sampling tube is D4. So here D2 minus D1 square upon D1 square into 100. Inside clearance is equals to D3 minus D1 upon D1 into 100, and outside clearance is equals to D2 minus D1 D2 minus D4 upon D4 into 100. Area ratio for obtaining good quality of one samples, the area ratio should be less than or equal to 10%. It may be high as 110% for thick wall samplers like split spoon sampler, and may be as low as 6 to 9% for thin walls samples like Shelby tube. About inside clearance, it allows elastic expansion for samples when it enters the sampling tube. It helps in reducing the frictional drag on the samples and also helps to retain the core. For an undisturbed sample, the inside clearance should be in between 0.5 to 3%. That you should remember. Then outside clearance it facilitates the withdrawal of samples from ground, and for reducing the driving force, the outside clearance should be as small as possible. Normally, it lies between 2%, so it should not be more than CI. CO should not be more than, means outside clearance should not be more than inside clearance. In recovery ratio, R suffix R, it is equals to capital L by H, where L is the length of sample within the tube and H is equals to the depth of penetration of sampling tube. R is equals to 96 minus 98% for getting a satisfactory undisturbed. Inside wall friction, the friction on the inside wall of sampling tube causes disturbances of sample. Therefore, the inside surface of a sampler should be smooth as possible. It is usually smeared with oil before used to reduce the friction. Design of non-written wall. The non-written wall provided for sampler should be proper design. It should have an orifice of large area to allow air, water, or slurry to escape quickly when samplers are driven. It should close when sample is withdrawn. Method of applying force. The degree of disturbance depend upon the method of applying force during sampling and depends upon the rate of penetration of the sample. For obtaining undisturbed samples, the sampler should be pushed and not driven. Some numericals based on sampling disturbance. The following dimensions are given for a Shelby tube sampler. External diameter is 51 mm. Internal diameter is 48 mm. Determine area ratio. See, the area ratio is equals to d0 square minus di square upon di square. 51 square minus 48 square minus upon 41 8 square is equals to 0.129, 12.9. So the criteria that area ratio should not be greater than here is equal to 10%. It means it will have to modify the sampler. Here numerical, then second numerical in which outer diameter, inner diameter, and length is given, which is the least disturbed sample in which in the above that you will have to solve. Next numerical is 75 mm is the external diameter of a sampling tube with the area ratio required of 20%. Determine the thickness of the sampling tube in what type of clay would such a high area ratio is required. After calculating AR is equals to 0.2 and DI is taken as 68.48 or 465 from area ratio. The wall thickness is equals to 75 minus 68 upon 2, that is 3.267 is the area ratio. When samples are to be in very steep to hard clay soil mixed with stone, sampling tubes with high area ratios are required. These are the types of samples: split spoon sampler, Shelby sampler, piston sampler. First we'll see the split spoon sampler, which is very important sampler used in standard penetration test also. It has a high diameter of 35 mm and an outside diameter of 50 mm, has a split barrel which is held together and cap at the per end. The thicker wall of standard sampler permits higher driving stresses than the Shelby tube, but does so at the expense of higher level the soil disturbances. Split spoon samples are highly disturbed. They are used for visual examination and for classification test. This is the diagram of split spoon sampler. At upper side it is coupling and at lower side it is driving shoe. Side diameter is 38 mm. Outside diameter of driving shoe is 50 mm, and at the edge it is 41 mm. Split spoon sampler, this is split tube which is split it into parts. This is ball check for, and this is vent port coupling, threaded area for rod. Height of this is 75 mm, and this its height is split tube height is 450 mm. This is a spring catcher, core catcher, scraper bucket. This is another type of sampler which is used for getting sample with the help of open slit attached or make available at on the circumferential area. This is the slit through which the soil sample will get into the sample. Shelby tube sampler is thin wall seamless steel tube of diameter 650 to 75 mm. The bottom end of the tube is sharpened. The tubes can be attached to drilling rods. The drilling rod with the sample is lowered to the bottom of borehole and sampler is pushed into the soil. The soil sample inside the tube is then pulled out. The two ends of the sampler are sealed and sent to the lab. The samples can be used for consultation or shear test. Shelby tube samplers is shown in this figure. This is mounting hole 10 mm dia, cutting edge height 12 mm, ball check, and this is the piston type arrangement. Come to standard penetration test. This is a test in which to obtain the N value. This is arrangement of this test: hammer, guide, and then impact block, then drill rod, on which split spoon sampler is generally placed where we are going to impact the load of this 63.5 kg hammer, and sorry, this is high hammer, and this will be placed on put on the that Shelby tube sampler, so that it will be penetrated into the ground, and it will penetrate up to, it should be penetrate up to 70 15 15 15 means 150 mm 150 mm 450 mm means 45 centimeter. First 450 mm is 15 centimeter is considered as a sitting drive, and another 300 mm is counted as a N value. As per IS 2192, the corrections are required for two effects, namely effect of overburden pressure and effect of dilatancy correction. So Terzaghi and Peck 1967 recommended the following corrections in case of silty fine grained sand when the observed value of N exceeds 15. The corrected penetration number will be NC is equals to 15 plus 1 by 2 NR minus N recorded minus 15, where NR is the recorded value and NC is the corrected value. If NR is less than equals to 15, NC equals to NR. Overburden pressure correction. In granular soils, the overburden pressure affects the penetration resistance. If the two soils having same relative density but different confining pressure are tested, the one with higher confining pressure gives a higher penetration number. As the confining pressure in cohesionless soil increases with the depth and penetration number of the soil, as shown, depth is underestimated, and that at greater depth of is over, estimated for uniformity n value obtained from the field test under different effective overburden pressure corrected to standard effective overburden pressure. Gibbs and Holmes in 1957 gave one equation for dry moist clean sand. NC is equals to NR into 350 upon sigma 0 bar upon 70, where NR is observed N value and NC is corrected N value. Sigma 0 bar is effective overburden pressure kilonewton per meter square. These are some correlations between N and phi. So N is 0 to 4, and it is called as very loose sand. 25 to 32 will be the angle of shearing resistance. 4 to 10, it is loose. 27 to 35 is the angle of shearing resistance. 10 to 30, it is medium. 30 to 40 degree is the angle of shearing resistance. 30 to 50, it is dense. 35 to 45 will be the angle of shearing resistance. And if the N value is greater than 50, then it is considered as very dense, and phi is greater than 45 degree. The correlation between N and QU is shown in the next table. This is the N value 0 to 30. Soil is very soft to hard. QU will be less than 25 to 400. These are the snapshot from field. Then come to next part of this lecture, plate load test. The plate load test is a field test for determining ultimate bearing capacity, as you know, and the likely settlement under given load. The plate load test basically consists of loading a steel plate placed at the foundation and recording the settlement corresponding to each load increment. The test is generally increased till the plate starts to sink at a rapid rate. The total value of load on the plate is in such a stage divided by area of steel plate gives the value of ultimate bearing capacity of soil. The ultimate bearing capacity of soil is divided by the suitable factor of safety, which varies from 2 to 3 to arrive the value of safe bearing capacity of soil. For better understanding, the plate load test can be subdivided into following heads: test setup, testing procedure, interpretation of results, and limitations of test. The setup is the test pit is dug at site up to depth of at which the foundation is proposed to be laid. The width of pit should be at least 5 times the width of test plate. At the center of pit, a small square depression or hole is made which size is equals to whose size is equals to the size of test plate and bottom level of the corresponding to level of actual foundation. The depth of hole should be such that the ratio of depth of width of loaded area is approximately the same as the ratio of actual depth to width of foundation. The mild steel plate, also known as a bearing plate, used in this study should not be less than 25 mm in thickness. Its size may vary between 300 to 750 mm. The plate could be square or circular in shape. Circular plate is adopted in case of circular footing, and square plate is used all other type of footing. The plate is machined on sides and edges. Procedure: the load is applied to the test plate through a centrally placed column. Test load is transmitted to column by one of the following two methods: by gravity loading or load thrust method. Gravity loading is also called as reaction loading method. Then here there is a gravity loading or reaction loading method we will discuss. In case of gravity loading method, the gravity platform is constructed over the column placed on the test plate and Test load is applied by the placing dead weight in the form of sandbags, pig iron, concrete blocks, lead bars, etc. on the platform. Many times a hydraulic jack is placed between the loading platform and column top or applying the load to the test plate. The reaction of the hydraulic jack being borne by the loaded platform, this form of loading is termed as reaction loading. In this figure, as per IS 1982, this is the reaction loading or gravity loading. Loaded platform is placed above the girders. Here there is a ball socket joint and pit test. This is test pit, 5 times the width of plate. This is the platform or girder, you can say. And here there is a dial gauge for measuring settlement, and this is the probing ring for measuring the load applied. This is the reaction by truss loading. This is truss loading method. Here are some holder piles are used for anchoring these truss, and when this jack will lifted this truss will give reaction and load will be applied on the plate. This is the dial gauge, this is bearing plate, this is foundation level, this is loading column. So as per IS 1888, a bearing plate dimension between 30 centimeter to 75 centimeter, and a smaller grooves will be like this, 2 mm, 1.5 mm, and then 5 times width of plate test pit is shown as shown in this figure, and width of plate is indicated by BP, therefore the width of pit will be the 5 BP. Generating pressure of 75 kPa is applied and then released. After some time before the tests are applied in the increment of approximately 1/5 of the estimated ultimate load, or one may choose the increase of load increment of 0.5 kilonewton. At each load increment is recorded at a time of interval 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 5 minutes, and thereafter at interval 1 hour. For clay soil, the load load is increased when time settlement occurs, shows that settlement has exceeded 70 to 80% the probable ultimate settlement or duration of 24 hours. For the other soils, the load is increased when the settlement rate drops below 0.02 mm per minute. The minimum duration for any load should, however, be at least the 60 minute dial gauge used for testing should have at least 25 mm travel and 0.01 mm accuracy. The load settlement curve can then be plotted. The load settlement curve can then be plotted from settlement data. These are some field snapshot. This see here, cross girders are provided, and this is C channels are placed over this cross girder, and then some steel plates are placed as a platform. Here sandbags are placed as a weight. So likewise the arrangement will be done, and here pressure pressure jack is connected to the jack, and plate is placed. This is a dial gauge. See here, this is the arrangement for dial gauge and jack. From here pressure increment will be given from this jack. These are the pressure gauge, hydraulic jack. These are the readings taken from time interval is 1, 5, 10, 20, 30, 60. Dial gauge reading 1, dial gauge reading 2. Pressure increment is here it is 9, 7 kg per centimeter square, then 14 kg per centimeter square. Likewise, 21 and 28 pressure gauge reading is given. And for each increment, 1, 5, 10, 20, 30, 60 will be the dial gauge measurement interval. After getting the results, we will have to draw the load settlement curve like this. These are the curves for various type of soil. Partially saturated cohesive soil, it is obtained as a straight line. And here dense cohesionless soil well-defined curve is obtained for dense cohesionless soil. For loose, it is obtained like this, just like a straight line. And for cohesive soil, somewhat curve, parabolic curve will be obtained. In constructing loading platform, the steel truss suitable size is provided. The truss is firmly anchored to the ground by means of ashen, as we have seen in previous slide. The settlement of plate is recorded and an accuracy 0.02 mm per mm with the help of sensitive dial gauge. At least 2 dial gauge. The same arrangement is other than the truss. There are some limitations of plate load test. The plate load tests is useful in obtaining necessary information about soil and design soil foundation, but it is having some limitation. Size effect. See here, the test results reflects only the character of soil located below the or within the depth of less than twice the width of bearing plate. Normally, the foundations are larger than the test plates. The settlements are and shearing resistance of soil against shear failure will depend on the properties of much thicker stratum. Thus, the result of test could be misleading if the character of soil changes at shallow depth. Scale effect for clay soil, the bearing capacity shear consideration for large foundation is almost same as that for the small test plates, but in this sand, the soil bearing capacity increases with size of foundation, and hence the test with smaller size plate tends to give conservative values in dense sandy soils. The other limitation, time effect, interpretation of failure load, reaction load, water table. So a plate load test of is essentially a test of short duration for clay soil. It does not give the ultimate settlement. The load settlement curve is not truly representative. Interpretation of failure load. The failure load is not well defined except in case of general shear failure, and in an error of personal interpretation may be involved in other types of failure. Reaction load, it is not practicable to provide a reaction of more than 250 kilonewton. Water table, the water level of the water table affects the bearing capacity of sandy soil. If the water table is above the level of footing, it has to be lowered by pumping before placing the plate. The test should be performed at the water table level if it is within about 1 meter below the footing. These are the ultimate bearing capacity of a proposed foundation QU can be obtained from the following relations. For clay soil, it is QUF is equals to QUP, and for sandy soils, QUF is equals to QUP into BF upon BP. BF is the foundation width. The plate load test can also be used to determine the settlement of for a given intensity of loading. The relation between the settlement of plate SP and that of foundation SF for the same load intensity are given below. For a clay soil, SF is equals to SP into a BP. SP is obtained from the load intensity settlement curve for Q0. For sandy soil, SF is equals to SP into BF BP upon plus 0.3 upon BP BF plus 0.3 power 2 whole square. The above equation, BF is the width of foundation in meters and BP is the width of plate in meters. For designing shallow foundation for all allowable settlement of SF, a trial error procedure is adopted, in which a settlement and QB curve is required. This is the straight line obtained having slope is equals to 1 minus mu square upon ES upon into I. So this plot is required between settlement and load. The slope of line is equals to this much, and the plate load test can also be used for determining the influence factor. From this we can get the influence factor I. There are some numericals available, but here I am not numericals. We have already seen this. So here, including, or I have completed all the topics from this. So I request Asif sir to conclude the lecture.
Thank you very much, sir. This was indeed a very knowledgeable lecture which you have given, and the students will definitely be benefited in their GATE preparation.
Yes, sir.
So we will conclude this session now here, sir. Thank you very much for sparing valuable time for us.
Okay. Thank you, Asif sir.
Thank you, sir.